I did 4 shows this weekend and didn't tell anybody till last minute. Can I get a kiss, puppy? Thank you. You want to do a sound check? Nothing to say today? Let's get unbothered.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Thai Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Thai Rivera. I'm your host, Thai Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. You know, this no edits thing is really getting the better of me, and that's not gonna help. I don't know why she decided to be obnoxious right now with that damn chicken that I bought for her a long time ago that she loves to throw around. But, you know, this is what it is, you guys, and I have this weird policy. If it gets too obnoxious, I'll stop her, but really I have this weird policy, and I've always had it with my dogs, where when they want to play, I just let them play. I don't typically stop play behavior. It doesn't matter who I'm on the phone with. It doesn't matter what's going on in my life. I let them play. I also will play with her, like, we have timed, like I told you guys, but let's not get into that. Anyway, I did 4 shows this weekend. I didn't tell, like, the people, like, I didn't post on social media. I didn't promote it, is what I should say. And it was only because I really don't feel like I've been able, well, not I don't feel, I know for a fact that I haven't been able to dedicate the time to stand up lately that I need to dedicate in order to have the amount of new material that I want in order to charge my fans to see me perform or have them go out of their way for it. And I know that I'm good at what I do, so it's always going to be good. You know, it's not like I'm worried like, oh, I'm going to have bad sets or anything like that. But is it going to be worth it for my fan base to come out and see me with the amount of new material that I'm doing? That's the way I see it. And even though I threw in some new stuff, and maybe I'll end up posting it on, what's it called, on YouTube, not YouTube, Patreon. Because, which by the way, my YouTube is now monetized here, so if you guys want to drop a super thanks, that would be super helpful. But if you don't, that's fine too. You know, I don't hustle you guys like that. But I was excited that my page got monetized so quickly after I started, like, actually consistently posting podcast episodes, you know, because I've had this channel for, I want to say, like 2 years now, but I just didn't do anything with it. You know, I posted 1 or 2 videos whenever, and so now maybe there's like 8 videos total on here now, but 4 or 5 of them have been over the last couple of weeks because I've been being really consistent about it, which I'm proud about. My hair's a mess. I'm a mess, but that's because I was working out today. I've gotten back to my full workout schedule as far as the cardio goes. Next, I'm going to reintroduce more weights. I've been doing some weights, but not a lot. Then, like I said, I'm also still working on the calisthenics type things with the handstands and things like that, but I've been bad about that lately. I'm going to get back to it. But things are on schedule as far as I go, and I'm really liking the way that my life is working out right now. But what I was saying is I will post it on Patreon because for those of you that haven't seen me perform live, you wouldn't know that, you know, I'm not doing stuff that's not like a lot of new material for me. But for people that have seen me live, especially here in the Phoenix area, because the last show that I did in Phoenix was the show that I independently produced, which was back in, I think it was July that I did that show. So from July to February, you would figure if I were in practice, like going to the open mics all the time and that kind of stuff, or even going to some open mics, then that would be one thing. But the fact that I haven't been going to open mics really does change things, because it's like I don't have the amount of material that I usually would be able to turn out. And I've always been in that practice, when it comes to doing stand-up, where I can put a lot of material out and it'll be quality material, but it's because I'll go to so many open mics and so many spots just to workshop what it is that I actually have in my head. And I always tell people I can take a bit from being like brand new and an idea to actually being pretty much ready to be on stage within 3 open mics, like 3 performances. I can figure out what I want to do with it. And yeah, there will be tweaking, because sometimes you're like, I want to change this around, or this might be better wording and stuff like that. There will be like constant evolution to the bit itself as I do it more and more in live performances or in paid performances, that kind of stuff. And then at open mics, I'll continue to work on it. Because some things, like you have the idea and it's funny, and it is funny, the audience likes it. But you're just like, this could be better. I could make this better. I can add this, or like, because a lot of my stuff is like from my life experiences or things that I notice. And so like a lot of times I'll force myself to examine my thinking while I'm on stage, and that's why I don't have any real limitations in my stand-up. Like a lot of people describe my stand-up as being like fearless or no holds barred, or you hear a lot of stuff like that when people are talking about my stand-up that are familiar with what I do, especially other people in the industry. But it's really because I just don't filter myself. I let myself say whatever I want, and whatever that is, if it's quote unquote racist, if it's sexist, if it's anti-trans, if it's homophobic, if it's whatever it is, I let myself say it on stage, and as long as people laugh at it. But like that's where some people will mistake what I do, because they'll be like, you're just getting cheap laughs with shock comedy. And it's like, no, the idea or the initial punchline may be shocking to some people, but what a lot of people don't realize is I've lived a shocking life. Like what a lot of people would consider shocking has been my life. Like when I talk about trans, I'm not talking about trans just for the hell of it. I'm talking about trans because I've had trans friends for so long. So when we see the evolution of LGBTQ and the way that's worked out, that really is like a deeper thought for me. So that's why in a lot of cases, yeah, I will get the initial laugh off of the shock or just saying whatever, which to me really isn't shock. It's just me talking about my life experience or the people that I know. But then when I really go into it, if you're at a live show, you'll really get to hear what it is I think and what it is I'm trying to say. And in some cases, it's actually very positive. Like that's been the thing with a lot of my YouTube channel, is it's way more positive than a lot of people would give it credit for if they're not paying attention to. That's why I'm thankful for so many of you that are my regular watchers on my main channel on YouTube, is because you guys really do seem to get what it is I'm saying, and you really do seem to understand that I'm coming from a place of life experience. And if you pay attention, a lot of the stuff I say even about trans, where some people will think that I'm being inflammatory in saying that, when it comes to trans specifically, we're not the transphobic ones. The trans activists and what are identifying as trans people are the transphobic ones. Because when you talk about transphobia and you talk about erasing trans people, the thing with that is, we're saying we accept you for what you are. You're a trans man, you're a trans woman. That means you were born the opposite of whatever it is you identify now. And we, for the most part, are saying, we get that. We're fine with that. It's when you start saying that you're the same as us, as people that were biologically born this way, that we have to stop you. And that's only out of respect to reality, and because we're not all going to play along to that degree. A lot of us, and I know a lot of the people that watch me, especially on my podcast, are the kind of people that are cool. And if you're not, trust me, I don't mind that either. But a lot of the people that watch my podcast are the kind that are like, yeah, if you're a cool person and you actually are making efforts to pass, then I will respect your preferred pronouns, and I will respect that you identify as the opposite of what you were born, and I have no problem accepting that. it's when you start trying to make it seem like you're the exact same as a person that was biologically born that way that we have to stop it, because that's when it does actually become a lie. And now not only are you lying, but you're forcing me to lie to you and lie about you and even lie to myself, because I know that what you're saying isn't factually correct. It's just not. But if you're willing to accept that about yourself, you'll find that the rest of the world is able to accept that too. Like, I had the same situation happen with me in a different way, but when I was coming out as gay. You know, like before I came out of the closet, I really was uncomfortable with even the idea of gay. You know, I really, and like, if people joked about me being gay, because, you know, I've always had certain mannerisms, even after I taught myself to present in a more masculine way, you know, because when I was younger, since I was with my mom and my 3 sisters, and my dad had to work a lot, so I wasn't able to get a lot of like male influence. You know, I was playing with Barbies with my sisters. I was doing jump rope. I would watch a lot of professional wrestling, you know, because I thought that was really fun. Star Wars was a thing for me, and my mom bought me a lot of boy toys. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I, you know, only had girl toys. And technically, I didn't have girl toys. I had access to girl toys because when I was little, you know, these ages that I'm talking about right now, that was before my little sister had come along. So I only had the 2 sisters at that time, but they were 2 older sisters, and they would influence me as far as, you know, I saw them playing and I wanted to play with what they were playing with. So if they're playing Barbies and doing jump ropes and playing with jacks, which you never see jacks anymore, but if they were playing with jacks or doing hopscotch or any of the stuff that they were doing, I wanted to be doing too, just because they were my older sisters, my siblings, and the biggest influence on me. And my sisters were like very girly in the way that they would sometimes decide it was a no boys allowed situation, and they would lock me out of their room, and I hate them for that to this day. Just playing, but I kind of do. But I really would, you know, so during that time, I really was like influenced by that. And so when I got older and I saw that that wasn't gonna let me blend well with the other boys, then I learned to present in a more masculine way, or come off more in a more masculine way, which, you know, ended up being very comfortable for me. You know, like, both are very comfortable for me. That's why I just let myself be however I am, and I don't pay attention to mannerisms at all, or trying to be any particular thing. You know, like, there are some gay men that really pride themselves on, like, you know, I'm a masculine presenting gay man, or I'm a masculine gay man. And it's like, yeah, that's cool, and I get that if that's something that you pride yourself on. But I personally wouldn't ever want to have to live up to that, especially when it comes to, because a lot of times when people are talking about that, they're referring to it in a relationship sense. And so when you're trying to make yourself seem a particular way so that you can be in a relationship with somebody, for me, I would never want to have to hold up this like image of myself as being particularly masculine, or having somebody put pressure on me to be particularly masculine, which is something that I've had. Ironically enough, feminine guys that I've dated before will really try to put that on me, where they're like, you know, I think you should like drive a truck, or I think you should do this particular thing, because they see me as masculine and they want me to be like a masculine fantasy for them. And so when we get to that kind of thing, that's where I do get uncomfortable. But my point was, even when I was, you know, really trying to play that role, I always had mannerisms that would let people know that I was at least semi-effeminate, you know, or I was not comfortable maybe, or like it being on the feminine side was a little more native to me because of the way that I was raised. That's a good way of putting it. I swear I'm a smart guy when I try. But what's it called? Which, by the way, talk about food all you guys want in the comments today, because I'm going to Golden Corral immediately after we watch this together and I do the live chat with you. I'm going straight to Golden Corral. So anything you guys mention, I'm going to be able to eat. And I heard that for an extra $7 now, you can get lobster at Golden Corral. So I'll let you guys know about that next week. I might even post some pictures and stuff like that. Jesus Christ, it's loud in here today. But, yeah, So when people would make gay jokes or say anything that was regarding gay in reference to me, it would really hurt my feelings and it would really bother me. And it would make certain people sort of like me less, and I think that that was on a subconscious level because I was still playing straight and saying that I was straight. I was in the closet, literally. And mind you, this didn't last long into my teens, but this was a very real and felt, I think, like a longer part of my life than it actually was because once you reach your teens, that's when you can't really deny your orientation anymore. You can't deny your orientation anymore when you get to a certain age because that really starts to wake up in you. You're attracted to what you're attracted to. You want to go after what you go after. And when you're trying to pretend that you're attracted to women, but you're legitimately not attracted to women, but you're still having to play this, and in some cases, like my case, actually having girlfriends and stuff like that, which one day we can talk more about that, but this episode I don't really feel like talking about that too much. But I think people can sense that you're being inauthentic. And so then once I actually came out as gay, any gay joke that anybody wanted to make about me, or anytime somebody wanted to be silly about that kind of stuff, it never bothered me or had any real effect on me. And it certainly didn't hurt my feelings because I was like, yeah, that's what I am. And I already admitted to it. That's why on X, I'll piss a lot of people off, well, I piss a lot of people off naturally on X, but on X, you'll notice if any of you follow me on that platform, I do piss a lot of people off, and it's because they try to bother me by calling me gay, especially people that are mad at a particular opinion that I have. They'll be like, or they'll call me the F slur for gay, which I can't say because, YouTube doesn't like that word, but it's something I identify as. So when I say that I don't care about that, or I just laugh it off, or I make jokes when they call me that, I know it really bothers them because they think that that's supposed to bother me, but it's only the closeted part of you that's bothered by that. In my opinion, that's all it's ever been. There's certain people that I won't hang out with that are other gays that at different points I've been friendly with because they weren't comfortable with the being gay part of them, because I've told you guys about my two best friends, Thomasina and Daraquisha, who I absolutely love both of them, and we have the most fun ever, calling each other she and her, and having that kind of gay fun, But then there's times where we completely turn it off and we're just normal guys hanging out with each other and being silly, and it's good. All of it's good as far as I go. But there was one particular friend I had that was and this was a regular gay man, biologically male, because I've had that problem with the trans friend too, which, yeah, I'll talk about that in just a second. But my one particular friend, I won't say his name, I'll just call him Jay for this particular. But one time he let me know, I'm really not comfortable with girl and she and all that stuff. I mean, I don't mind if you do it, but I really don't like it. And I felt like this is one of the last times I'm going to talk to this guy because for me, it's only if you really put stock in all that it's really a thing for you, And I as I got to know him better, I'm still friends with him. I didn't cut him off, but it's if I can't be that level of comfortable with the people that I'm really hanging out with, because I would actually hang out with them for a while there. If I can't be that level of comfortable, then what are we doing really, But I had that, we're still friends. I didn't turn it into a situation. I just made a mental note to myself because I don't want to be filtering myself around my friends like that. With my straight friends, it's very easy for me not to call them girl or refer to them in, feminine pronouns. But sometimes if I'm being silly with my straight friends or they're acting gay, in my opinion, or what I would consider gay, I definitely will hit them with a she and a her and, treat them like gay men. And I'll tell them, well, don't act like a if you don't want me to treat you like one, you know? But all of my straight friends are very fun about that. But yeah, you know, I had that problem with one of my trans friends, a trans man friend. And, you know, I've talked about that on my regular channel before. His name was Tyler. And I really loved Tyler. And Tyler looked like an actual man. There's no thing about Tyler. He's a lot like Buck Angel in the way that I guess if you're looking for, if you really scan them, you can notice. But if you're not paying attention to that thing, or that's not what you're looking for, you wouldn't know Buck Angel was born female. You know, you just accept that Buck Angel was a guy. You just would assume that Buck Angel was a guy. Same with my friend Tyler. And Tyler was like Buck in the way that, because, you know, now people get the scars for their top surgery, you know, because they want you to know that they're trans. But Tyler was from the same school of thought that Buck was from, where they really did have gender dysphoria, really do have gender dysphoria. So they wanted to convincingly portray or present as male, you know, as possible. And so they went to, you know, great lengths to go to the best surgeons that they could possibly go to so that they wouldn't look like they had top surgery. And so Tyler would dance at the clubs with his shirt off and stuff like that. And, you know, we became really good friends. There was a group of us that hung out. It was Dwayne, Tyler, me, and Steven. And then my friend Jens is the one that had actually introduced me to that crew. But Jens ended up hanging out less than everybody else because at a point, Jens had turned, I think 50 was what Jens had turned. Or maybe it was 45. No, I think it was 50. But he decided that he was no longer sexually viable. His words. Which, if you ask me, Jens was still a good-looking guy and still could, you know, if he wanted to hook up. But also, Jens, you know, has very European features. He's German, and he has, even though he has dark hair, he's very traditionally European looking. And so, you know, a very good looking guy. But I think he felt like he didn't meet his own standard anymore, which is a ridiculous way to live, you know, but he felt like he didn't meet his own standard of attractiveness anymore because of his age, and so he stopped hanging out. But with Tyler, there was a point where he told me, you know, because at first we didn't know he was trans. Some people had told us at the club or whatever. It ended up being him and Dwayne had dated ended up dating for a while and stuff like that. And so at a point, I don't remember if he actually came out to us as trans or if he just, you know, told Dwayne as they were getting to know each other. And because, like I said, somebody had already told us at the club anyway, so it wasn't like Dwayne completely didn't know. And then Dwayne decided that he didn't care, even though Dwayne is a gay man, which this is where it'll get dicey with some of the purists out there that'll be like, well, technically that means Dwayne is a bisexual because, yeah, I know that technically that's what that means. But I also do understand that sometimes somebody will be in something and that doesn't completely redefine what they are because there was one particular anomaly. You know, like I see that with straight women all the time where they'll have a moment, even a long moment sometimes, like a relationship with another woman, but it was only because for some reason that particular woman like struck them a particular way and they were able to be in a relationship with her even though that's not what they would usually go for and they aren't technically lesbians. And I wouldn't even put them in the bisexual category either, even though they had that relationship, because it was just basically a one-off where they had such a connection with this particular person that they were able to actually be with them and see them in that way as well. And that was just part of the package, you know, it was just part of it. And so that was the way that I always felt about Dwayne and Tyler. Like, I didn't think that that now meant that Dwayne was a bisexual man because he had dated a trans man who was technically a female. I felt like Dwayne just had enough of a connection with Tyler that he was able to overlook that and they were able to make it work, and but like I said, some people will get mad at me, which I gotta be honest, I care so little about people getting mad at me at this point when it comes to that kind of stuff, because I just talk about my observations and what it is that I've actually witnessed firsthand, and that's where my observations come from, where a lot of these people are speaking in generalities in a lot of cases and not any real life experience. Like, that's what you notice a lot of arguing with me on X, especially when the other gays get mad at me. And then I'll call them out and be like, well, you don't really sound like you've had a lot of experience actually in the community, because like that's one thing I can tell you is, even though I choose not to be a part of the LGBTQ community and don't identify as being part of the LGBTQ community, I definitely do have a lot of experience in the community. And before it went all haywire and crazy, that was one of the things that I liked about it, was there was less actual focus. Now I understand why there has to be a focus and why some gays and lesbians are so clear about being gay and lesbians. I definitely do understand that. But I remember there was kind of a sweet spot for a while there where you just were these things, and it wasn't something that you had to really base your personality on, and it wasn't something that you really had to assert within the community. Yeah, there was that period at the same time where we were having to tell the outside world that we are gay, and we're not going to hide it, and we're not going to be in the closet, and we're not going to be in relationships that aren't beneficial to either party, because that's what society tells us that we should do. And so you had miserable women because they were married to gay men and they hadn't realized that these men were gay, and now they're extremely unhappy because their husband isn't attracted to them, and in some cases did just do the basics that they thought they had to do, like procreate and get married, and it's all for show at a certain point. And so, like, nobody was happy in those relationships. The husband wasn't happy because he's actually gay and wants to pursue other men and what being a gay man is. And then the wife isn't happy because she's got this husband that isn't attracted to her, which we all know, whether you're gay or straight. And if you're in a long-term relationship with people, I know there are some people that defy this, like literally aren't that way, but in a lot of cases things do drop a little bit, the level of attraction you have to a person. And if you're in a relationship that isn't that, I definitely do respect that and I applaud you. But I just know that for me, in a lot of cases, and maybe it's about some of us aren't waiting long enough to meet the right one, maybe I've waited too long to meet the right one, but never mind, that story for a different day. But yeah, maybe some people are in that, but when level of attraction drops and then you're also not naturally attracted to that anyway, then you end up in a very, very sexless situation where it's just kind of like, we're just kind of friends, and it's like, yeah, you're not even his wife, you're basically his hag, That's what that turned into. You didn't realize it was going to turn into that, but that's what it turned into. And but my point is, with Tyler, because he looked like a man, and he also, fully identified as a man, and a gay man at that, and he was dating my gay friend Dwayne, I was able to fully buy into it. And so I would talk to him like I would talk to Dwayne and Steven and Jens, the other gays that we would hang out with. I would talk to him the same way, I would be like girl and Miss Thang and bitch and all the ways that we talk to each other as gay men. And there was a point where it was just me and him hanging out, because we would all... That's one of the things that I really liked. That was probably one of the most fun gay friend groups I ever had. And it's too bad they all turned on me. But it was one of the most fun gay friend groups I ever had, because we would go to events together like Sunset Junction, which is a street fair in LA. We would go to a club called Akbar in LA. Silver Lake is where that club is. And that club is like, it's just open to everybody, I mean, like, technically, I believe it's a gay club, but straight people go there, and, it's just like a club that's open. Whatever you are, you can go to Akbar. And but Dirty House Club was on Thursdays, and since Dwayne and Steven were both from New York and had known each other since they were young, like kids, they loved to go to Dirty House Club, and it was every Thursday, and it was, I think, 11, and I would go there after my sets, whatever I was doing, whether it was 11 or 12 or whenever I got done with doing stand-up, I would go there. And my point is, when the reason that I liked them so much as a friend group was because we all were so comfortable with each other, and we all were so cool with each other. And there was no like backstabby, weird kind of competition behavior or anything like that, and we all would laugh a lot, but we would also break off into groups sometimes, or, little pairings, like obviously Dwayne and Tyler are dating, so sometimes they'd break off into their own things and go do something, and then it would be me and Steven just hanging out, or Jens wouldn't make it out on a particular night and Tyler didn't feel like going out, so it was just me, Dwayne, and Steven, or just me and Dwayne sometimes would hang out, and sometimes it would be just me and Tyler. And me and Tyler got pretty close. But there was a point in the beginning before we got close, where I was talking to him like a gay man and using some of the, girl and stuff like that. And I just remember him being like, well, Ty, because I'm trans, I'm not really comfortable with you calling me she and her. And I was like, well, then I think you need to find another friend, Tyler, because you are asking me to treat you as a gay man and to respect you as a gay man. And in my mind, I definitely do think of you as a gay man, and that's why I'm talking to you like I would talk to any other gay man. So if you're telling me that you're a gay man that I can't talk to like I would talk to like any other gay man, then I don't know how to interact with you, and I'm not going to be a good friend for you. And he left that alone at that point, because he understood that this is me treating you exactly like you say you want to be treated. So if I give you exactly what you want, don't get mad at me when it doesn't turn out to be exactly what you thought it was going to be, because this is the reality of being a gay man. And when I first came out of the closet, I didn't like that stuff either, but I realized that that was the closeted me still having to shed that skin, And I think I really did help Tyler in that way, because, I think it helped him blend better after, overall, after he really understood that. Because I think until that point, people had been more willing to kind of bend in that way, which doesn't let you fully immerse yourself in the character, But yeah, they did all turn on me eventually, and it was over politics, but I don't think that ever should have happened. And it's one thing that I don't do with my friends is when it comes to their politics, I don't care. I don't even care if we don't ever talk about politics as far as friends go. I talk about that on my channel because I do have strong feelings about it, and I do think that there are certain viewpoints that I have that I would like the world to hear, especially from a gay man, because I know that there are a lot of us that aren't able to speak up because they don't necessarily want to lose their jobs or stuff like that. So I feel like a person like me almost does have a responsibility to talk about these things and to let it be known that we're out there, because I'm almost being a voice for those that can't actually speak up for themselves because they do have something on the line. Where a person like me, I can go back to doing stand-up full-time all the time, anytime I want to. And, because my entire thing throughout my entire career, and this is something I'm glad for, because sometimes people ask me if I ever wish that I had gone the more mainstream route and just carried the LGBT flag, so to speak, and really towed the party line to the left so that, I could have gotten that money, because it definitely would have been way more lucrative for me to have done that. And the fact of the matter is, I don't wish that I had done that, because eventually the real me would have broken out, because I would have been playing a character. Now, don't get me wrong. There was a time where I definitely could have done that, at least to a degree, and had it be genuine for me. Like I tell you guys all the time that, like, one of my main goals when I first came out in stand-up, or because I always was out in stand-up, but I should say started doing stand-up, was to help out with the trans community. So now I still feel like I am satisfying that mission, just not necessarily in the way that I thought that I would. But I always wanted the trans people that I knew that were always trying their best to just blend and be like everybody else and just live normal lives and not be harassed when they were doing everyday things. I did want to be able to help them live those normal lives, and help people see that they were just as normal as everybody else, even if they weren't just as normal as everybody else. Reality is reality, but sometimes that's a part of understanding what normal is that very few people, especially if you really dig into their personal lives, are what you would call normal or what they should be according to, like, I know doctors that I've known personally, hung out with, partied with, that people would assume that they're very straight-laced and they're very good at what they do and they're very talented, but some of them are at raves all the time. Some of them do way more than they should be doing. I mean, like, this is the reality of some teachers in some cases. I've known teachers in my life that, are very good at what they do and very professional and great with their students. But when it comes to their personal life, it's like, you do not have it together at all. You party too much, you drink too much. But as long as you're able to do everything the way that you need to do it and you're appropriate in professional circumstances, then it really shouldn't matter, But I know that, with my particular situation and the way that I think, I would definitely eventually just have to be me at a point, and the thing that I found the most disappointing about the LGBT, or at that time the gay community, when I was first starting out, was that I quickly noticed that there's a lot of jealousy in the gay community when it comes to talent. That was the first disappointment, and the thing before LGBT turned into the ridiculous thing that it turned into, that I had to really deal with, and that made me lose confidence in the gay community and not really want to be a voice for them in a lot of ways, was because I do these amazing sets in gay shows, and they would always have some sort of critique for me or some reason that I wasn't supposed to express myself the way that I was expressing myself. Even, like I said, before things turned politically correct. Like, I remember there was this time that I did this show at a place called Mark's in West Hollywood, which I don't even know if that bar is still there, but Mark's was one of the first, if not the first, paid gig I ever did. I think it paid me $25, and I was so excited about doing it. And Guy Branum had done it, which, I've fallen out with Guy Branum. At a point, we were really cool. But, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Guy Branum. He's a really fat guy that was on Chelsea lately. And, but, we ended up falling out, but it was about that same kind of stuff, like the LGBT, stuff. But like I said, he used to do that show. And then there was just a group of gay comedians that would only do gay shows. Which Guy Branum wasn't that type, but he was always in the alti rooms, like the alternative comedy rooms. And so what happened was, there was a point where I was doing that show, and it was probably the second time I did it. And there's this thing with gay audiences where sometimes they really like to let people just fry. And it's one of the things I respect about gay audiences, and I have fun with it. But, I was brand new at the time. You have to remember, like I said, this was my first paid gig. Before that, I was only doing open mics. And so what happened was they were on that night just particularly rough, not laughing at anything. And so I was watching every single comic go on stage with light in their eyes and thinking that I'm going to be the one to break them. That's what they were doing. All of them were doing it. And so, and they'd go up, and maybe for the first not even 5 minutes, maybe the first 2 minutes, they'd have a lot of energy, because they were the one that was going to crack this audience. They were the one that this audience was going to love. And so they'd go up and they'd be doing their best, and this audience just would not laugh at them. And they did it to every single comic on the show. So when it was my turn to go on, after seeing them do it to every comic, and this wasn't, technically at the time, I still had stage fright. I wasn't even comfortable being on stage yet, I knew my material and I knew what I was supposed to do, but it was one of the first times that I ever really improv'd, which now I do a lot of improv, not actual improv, but improving on stage, but it was one of the first times I actually improv'd. And so I was like, I went on stage and I called it out. I was like, I noticed you guys are just breaking every one of these comedians tonight. And then I told them, you're not going to do that with me. And I started just cussing them out. And part of that, even when I was thinking about it in the moment, part of what inspired me was having been around so many drag shows before drag shows turned into what they are now. But having been at so many drag shows when I was younger, and noticing that the bawdier, the bolder, the more insulting that the drag queen was with the gay audience, the more the gay audience would just go with them. So that's where I even got the idea, or kind of the inspiration for doing that on that particular set. It was in the moment thinking and just being like, I've seen drag queens deal with this kind of stuff before, and they just curse them out. And so that's what I did, was just curse them out, and they loved it. And, because I'm naturally, even when I cuss people out all the time in my personal life, like my friends and stuff like that, and they laugh and we have fun with it, because I'm not really mad at them. It's just a fun way of talking and a fun way of just being like, you crazy bitch. I do it, and they do it with me too. Especially Derek, Quisha, and Thomasina. They do it with me regularly. But we have fun with it, and so I was having fun like that with this audience, and they were really loving it. I had a great set. You could honestly say I killed it, and people were coming up to me after the show and really, excited, just telling me how great it was and how much fun they had and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, one of the other gay comedians that was also a producer that ate it everywhere he went and no longer even does stand-up anymore. I'll talk about him a little more in a second, because there's a way that played out too. But he walks up to me at that point, and keep in mind, it's after literally groups of people are coming up to me telling me how funny they thought I was and how much fun they had with my set. He comes up to me and he was like, hey, Ty. And I was like, what's up? And he was like, great set. And then I was like, thanks. And then he was like, where'd you learn to do that? And I was like, oh, really? It was just something I picked up. And I started telling him what I already told you guys, that it was something that I picked up from watching the drag shows and stuff like that. And then he was like, yeah, don't ever do that in a paid show again. And he starts really trying to lay into me. And I was like, because I always had the attitude. Like once I'm off, like I said, when I'm on stage, yeah, at that time, stage fright and stuff like that. I have no stage fright anymore. But like at that time, yeah, when I'm on stage, stage fright. But after I get off stage, and especially in a gay setting, I'm right back to being a gay man. And I'm very experienced at being a gay man. And I knew this queen that ate shit shouldn't be telling me anything about my set. What he should have done was taken notes and possibly incorporated something like that into the next time that he was eating shit the way that he had been eating shit earlier that night, which we had all witnessed. And so I knew that he shouldn't be telling me anything like that. So when he went into that, I literally told him, yeah, you need to worry about your own set as poorly as you did. And technically you eat it everywhere I see you. Because I would see him out on the scene a bit and he was always doing terribly. And he was a decent looking guy. And I think the problem for him was that he was a good looking guy in West Hollywood, a good-looking gay man in West Hollywood, so he thought that that just would naturally translate to stage, and it doesn't necessarily translate to stage. Just because people think you're attractive in the gay world doesn't mean they're necessarily going to laugh at your jokes, because it's not the same situation. And a lot of times people that are exceptionally good-looking, which this guy wasn't exceptionally good-looking, but he was good-looking, but a lot of times when good-looking people are in regular conversation, people will laugh at them or laugh at the things that they say just as a way of flirting with them, you know? They have the ulterior motive of wanting to actually hook up with this person. So, of course, they're going to and, you know, really give it up, so to speak, in hopes that they'll give it up. And really, that's the way it works, you know, in a lot of cases. And you see it with, like, female comedians, sometimes really attractive female comedians, too, where they just can't understand why audiences aren't laughing at them, because in regular life, people laugh at the stuff they say all the time. People will laugh at everything that they say that they think is funny, you know, that the speaker thinks is funny, but they don't realize that the listener in a lot of cases is flirting with them, so they're laughing because they're hoping that that will buy them. So anyway, so that's what a lot of this guy Steve, and I can't remember his last name, I wish I could, but that was a lot of what he was going off of, you know. He wasn't actually funny, though, and he never really tried to develop the funny. He just kept wondering why it wasn't working. And so I really laid into him, because he really did, like, that beginning part set me off, because he was like, don't ever, and this is a paid audience, and I was like, I don't even know who you think you're talking to right now, you know. And yeah, have that conversation with me or anybody else if they didn't do well with it, if all they did was offend the audience, if they weren't fun in the way that they cussed the audience out. But clearly the audience knew how to take me, and clearly I was able to get my point across without actually insulting them, or without, not a single, I can tell you guys that night, not a single person walked out because of what I was saying. It was like we were on a patio area that they had enclosed, and like I really did like the way that club was set up for comedy. And there were nights that it was just super, super fun there. But, you know, but because I spoke up for myself in that instance, his co-producer, who is a guy named Charlie, that Charlie had been one of the people earlier that had told me what a great set I had and stuff like that. And so when Charlie approached me again, he was like, yeah, I heard you got into it with Steve. And so I was explaining it to him. And keep in mind, like I said, Charlie had told me what a great set I had had. Charlie turns on me and makes it seem like I should have just listened to Steve and understood where he was coming from. And at a point, Charlie told me, yeah, Ty, you know, it's just the way you're arguing this right now. I don't want to use the word difficult, but it's coming off a little like you might just be a difficult personality. And I really didn't get it, but I also just decided at that point that Charlie wouldn't be a good fit for me, and that I didn't want to do their shows anymore, you know, Charlie and Steve, or try to please that particular group or that particular part of gay comedy or the gay comedians, you know, or having people see me and acknowledge how great I had done at particular shows, but then not ask me to be on the gay comedy festival or not ask me to do any gay events. And the reason was because they were only doing gay shows, they weren't very good at stand-up. And because I was open to doing absolutely everything, and everywhere I could possibly be, I was getting really good at stand-up, even though, mind you, I still had terrible stage fright. I was still working through my stage fright, but I was really good at kind of pretending like I didn't have stage fright while I was performing. But at that time when I had the stage fright, I really did have to, I couldn't do any crowd work. You know, I couldn't. If the audience talked, I'm really good at working through distractions, because if the audience talked, I couldn't respond to it because I had to stick to a literal script. I had written down every single joke I was supposed to do, word for word. I had written down every bit. Like, that's the only way I could get through with my stage fright, you know? And then years later, when I did Comedy Central and I was performing with Joe Coy and stuff like that, I ended up seeing that guy, Steve, and he was still only doing open mic. You know, he wasn't a working comedian, because like I said, he never worked on getting funny. He just kept wondering what was wrong with the audience. You know, that was his thing, was he wanted to figure out what was wrong with the audience, and never bothered working on his stand-up. But there was a point where he told me that he, where he came up to me and he tried to act like we were best friends, you know what I mean? And, oh, you're doing great, and we're so proud of you, and what, it's like, girl, get away from me, you know, which I was nice about it in the moment. I was like, pleasant, because, I saw no reason to really hold a grudge, because I had clearly won. Like, I am a working comedian. And at that time, I had already, like I said, done Comedy Central, I think twice, because, I remember it was after I had worked with Gabriel Iglesias, which his show on Comedy Central was like the first thing that I did for Gabriel, Maybe I did one other show for him before I did Comedy Central, but Comedy Central, doing his show on Comedy Central was how we kicked off our kind of friendship and my working for him for that little while, which I wouldn't even say working together. I definitely did work for Gabriel Iglesias. It was his tour. Everything he did is to do with him. He's the person that's in charge of all the hiring. Comedy Central does have some say, but he's made so much money for Comedy Central that they don't exercise much of that say at all. They just kind of trust him because he's such a golden goose for them, and I don't think he's even with Comedy Central, or doesn't really do anything for Comedy Central anymore. I haven't talked to him in forever, but my point is, this guy, Steve, suddenly is now trying to be best friends because he feels like I could possibly do something for him, or I could possibly, help him out in some way, which that part I never would, and not based off of anything to do with catty or anything like that, or a grudge or holding on to hard feelings, but just because, like I said, he had never worked to a point where he was actually funny. And that's one thing that's always been a requirement for me in people that I help out or people that I work with. And is if I know that they're funny, or I can tell that they're funny, but it just hasn't come out yet because they haven't been able to bring it out for various reasons. Some people have trouble conveying their personalities and stuff like that. And with people like that, I've helped a lot of people get way better at stand-up by just telling them how they could capitalize on their personality, because I love stand-up so much that it's easy for me to watch people. And some of these people, most of them, I've helped completely free of charge. Like, anytime anybody's ever worked with me or hired me to help them with stand-up, it has been off of them wanting me to help them with their stand up and not me trying to like talk them into it or sell them on it. Anytime I ever come up to anybody and I'm like, you could do this and this and this a little bit different, and then you'll would get maybe a better result. Like there was one guy that just everybody thought he was a creep, and he's straight. So it wasn't like anything to do with gay comedy or anything, but everybody just thought he seemed like a creep, like that's the way he came off on stage. And so the audience wasn't able to laugh at him because they felt like he was a creep. Like literally that's the way people felt about him, and he was a decent looking guy. So it wasn't like it wasn't like, anything that just visually should be throwing him off, and so I one day asked him if he wanted my advice, and he was like, yeah, I would love your advice. This was pretty recent, you know what I mean? And so he was like, and so he knew that I was good at stand-up and stuff like that. And so I told him, I really feel like if you put this joke at the beginning of your set, it really sets up your personality as far as you not being relatable and you kind of knowing that you come off as a creep or knowing that there's a particular perception that people have of you. And I think in you acknowledging that at the beginning by putting this joke first, I think it really sets you up so that you'll do really well in your set, because people will right away have that kind of baseline and know where to put you and know that you're in on the joke as well. And so I told him that, and then I told him like which jokes, because I had seen him enough, and I told him which jokes, because if I really like what I'm seeing on stage at different points, I will like take notes as the comic is performing and then tell them, And with this guy being so new, I was like, yeah, there's kind of a lot that I'm noticing here. So I told him how to structure the first part of his set, and he tried it, and sure enough, had much better results. I'm not going to lie to you and say it was perfect, and from then on he was killing it, because to tell you the truth, he was a hard head and eventually went back to doing things in the hardest way possible and didn't take my advice, when really what he should have done was taken my advice, done it that way several times, built up a little bit of a reputation for at least being good, because not only was the audience feeling like he was a creep, the comedians were feeling like he was a creep too. And like, if he had been able to like break that, he would have done much better, and he would have got asked to do more shows, and he would have gotten stage time. And then after he gets his foot in the door, then he could play around more and go back to doing it his way and doing whatever he wanted. But that's always been a thing for me, is if I see something in somebody, or I think somebody is talented or is funny, then I definitely will help them. And I don't care about their orientation. I don't care what they identify as. I don't care what their race is. I don't care about any of that stuff. I just see talent and I see funny, and I want to see that get better because I want stuff to watch. And that's really what it's about, is my own selfish love for stand-up and wanting to see good stand-up actually rise above and be able to be out there, and for all of us to be able to appreciate it, including myself. And so when that guy Steve, or any of the gays that later on tried to change their tune about me once they had seen me having some success, I will be nice to them. I'm not going to be mean, because like I said, I feel like I've already won, because I'm doing stand-up, and I can do stand-up anytime I want to, in any city I want to. So I'm not going to be mean to them, but at the same time, just based off of talent, I'm not going to be nice to them either, or try to help them out. I'll be pleasant, I'll be cordial, but I'm not going to go out of my way to be like, yeah, you should do this particular show, and I know this particular person. Why? Just because you're gay? To me, that means absolutely nothing. Get funny, and then let's talk. But until then, stay unbothered.